Find another seat. My bag was here first. Victoria Langford's voice cut through the first-class cabin with the sharp certainty of someone who had never been told no. Her cream leather handbag rested across seat 2, like it had purchased the ticket itself, its gold clasp catching the overhead light, while Adrian Cole stood quietly in the aisle, holding a boarding pass that clearly displayed the same seat number. Around them, the low murmur of boarding passengers faded. Heads turned. A businessman paused while lifting his carry-on. A mother stopped adjusting her daughter's headphones. Even the flight attendant near the galley looked over, though she made no immediate move to intervene. Adrian glanced at the bag, then at Victoria. He wore a charcoal hoodie beneath a tailored black jacket, dark jeans, and clean sneakers. No watch flashed at his wrist. No assistant followed behind him. Nothing about his appearance announced that his name sat on aircraft ownership documents, safety contracts, and boardroom agendas across the country. That was exactly how he wanted it. "That is my assigned seat," he said, his voice calm enough to make Victoria's irritation seem louder. She leaned back in 2B and looked him over slowly, from his shoes to his face, as though searching for evidence that he belonged anywhere near her. "There must be a mistake," she replied. "People are always wandering into the wrong cabin." Adrian raised the boarding pass slightly. "Seat 2A, first class." Victoria did not look at it. Instead, she placed one manicured hand on the bag, as if protecting something valuable. "My husband may be joining me. You can sit somewhere else until this gets sorted out." Susan Miller, the lead flight attendant, approached with a practiced smile that disappeared the moment she looked at Adrian. "Is there a problem?" she asked, though her body had already turned toward Victoria. "He is insisting on taking this seat," Victoria said. "I explained that it is being held." Susan finally glanced at Adrian's pass, but only for a second. "Sir, the seating chart may have changed. Why don't you step back so we can finish boarding?" Adrian did not move. "Scan the ticket again." Susan's smile tightened. "There is no need to create tension." The words hung in the cabin like a quiet accusation. Adrian looked past her toward the open cockpit door, then back at Victoria's handbag. A red transfer tag hung from one handle, half hidden beneath a silk scarf. The printed words were small, but he recognized them immediately. "Crew transfer, do not scan." His expression did not change, but his attention sharpened. That tag was never meant for passenger luggage. Victoria noticed where he was looking and pulled the scarf over it. "Why are you staring at my things?" she snapped. Adrian met her eyes. "Because your bag is in my seat." A few passengers exchanged uneasy glances. Susan stepped closer, lowering her voice without softening it. "Sir, I am asking you to cooperate." Adrian looked at the empty seat, the concealed tag, and the flight attendant who had decided he was the problem before checking a single fact. Then he said, quietly, "A handbag does not outrank a boarding pass." The cabin went still, and somewhere behind Susan, a young flight attendant named Hannah Reed looked down at her tablet and saw something that made the color drain from her face. Hannah stared at the screen, then at Adrian, then back at the screen again. Seat 2A was not marked as open, reassigned, or pending. It was confirmed under Adrian Cole, checked in 23 minutes earlier, and cleared through priority boarding without any warning attached. Her thumb hovered over the tablet, as if the truth itself had become dangerous to touch. "Susan," she said carefully, "his ticket is valid." Susan did not turn around. "We are handling it." "The system shows him in 2A, Hannah continued. "There is no seat change." Victoria gave a dry laugh and adjusted the silk scarf over the red tag. "Then the system is wrong." Adrian watched Hannah's face. She was young, maybe 25, with the uneasy posture of someone still learning which rules were written for safety and which ones were used to protect authority. Susan finally faced her. "Go assist in the rear cabin." Hannah remained still. "But boarding is almost complete, and he is assigned here." Susan's expression hardened. That was not a suggestion. The words were quiet, but every nearby passenger heard them. Hannah lowered the tablet, though she did not walk away. Adrian had seen that hesitation before. It lived in conference rooms, inspection bays, and executive meetings where junior employees recognized a problem but feared becoming one by speaking. He looked at Susan. "You asked me to cooperate. I have shown you my identification and my boarding pass. What exactly am I refusing to do?" Susan folded her hands in front of her. "You are delaying departure. Your refusal to verify a seat is delaying departure." Victoria sighed dramatically. This is unbelievable. Some of us have connections to make. Adrian turned toward her. Then moving your bag would save time. A man across the aisle covered a smile with his hand. Victoria noticed and stiffened. You have no idea who you are speaking to, she said. My husband serves on this airline's board. There it was. Not an explanation. A shield. Susan's posture shifted almost imperceptibly, but Adrian caught it. So did Hannah. Mrs. Langford is a valued passenger, Susan said. And I am a ticketed passenger, Adrian replied. Those should not be competing categories. The last passengers moved slowly past them, pretending not to stare. The cabin felt smaller now, compressed by silence and the growing awareness that something was wrong. Adrian stepped half a pace closer to the seat, careful not to touch the bag. The red tag remained partly hidden, but one corner showed a second printed line beneath the first. Internal transfer authorization. He knew the format. His company had designed the tracking protocol after an unregistered battery shipment overheated in a cargo facility 3 years earlier. Passenger items were never supposed to carry that tag. Never. Susan raised her hand toward the aisle. Sir, I can offer you a seat in economy while we review this after departure. Adrian looked at her for a long second. You want the passenger with the valid first-class ticket to move, while an unscanned bag keeps the seat. Susan's eyes narrowed. Do not mischaracterize the situation. Then characterize it accurately. Hannah drew a quiet breath. On her tablet, a new notification appeared. Seat 2, it had just been changed from confirmed to manual review. The timestamp was current. The authorization code belonged to Susan Miller. Hannah looked up, and this time the fear in her face was joined by certainty. Adrian saw it immediately. What changed, he asked. Susan answered before Hannah could speak. Nothing that concerns you. Adrian's voice remained level. A valid ticket was altered while I stood here watching. Victoria pulled the handbag closer to her side, and something solid shifted inside with a muted metallic sound. Adrian's attention moved to the bag again. Susan noticed. Her expression changed for only a second, but it was enough. Adrian understood then that the seat was not the real problem. The bag was. The metallic sound was small, but it changed the air around Adrian. Victoria immediately placed both hands over the handbag, while Susan stepped between him and the seat as though his attention had become the offense. You need to stop inspecting another passenger's property, Susan said. Adrian did not look away from the bag. I am not inspecting it. I am noticing what your crew should have noticed before boarding. Victoria gave a sharp laugh. Now he thinks he works here. A few passengers shifted in their seats. The remark landed exactly as she intended, carrying more than impatience. It carried judgment. Adrian turned to her slowly. You decided I did not belong in this cabin before you read my ticket. Victoria lifted her chin. I decided you were making everyone uncomfortable. By standing beside the seat I paid for. By refusing to understand how things work. Susan stepped forward before Adrian could answer. Mrs. Langford is correct. This situation is becoming disruptive. Adrian looked at her. I have not raised my voice. Aggression is not always loud, Susan replied. The accusation entered the cabin like smoke. No evidence. No action. Just a word chosen because it could turn calm resistance into a threat. Luis Mendoza, seated across the aisle in 3C, lowered the business magazine in his hands. He had watched from the beginning, first with discomfort, then with disbelief. He is not being aggressive, Luis said. Susan glanced at him. Sir, please remain out of this. I am already in it. Everyone here is. You changed his seat while he was standing in front of you. Susan's face tightened. You do not have access to our operational information. The young flight attendant said his ticket was valid. All eyes moved toward Hannah. She stood near the galley, holding the tablet against her uniform. Susan turned toward her with a warning in her stare. Hannah, return to your assigned duties. Hannah swallowed. Seat 2A was confirmed when he boarded. Victoria waved one hand dismissively. She is a trainee. She probably read it wrong. Hannah looked down at the screen. I did not read it wrong. Susan crossed the aisle and lowered her voice, but not enough. You are still under probation. Think carefully before you challenge a lead crew member in front of passengers. Hannah's fingers tightened around the tablet. Adrian saw the fear return, but this time it did not erase the truth. It only made speaking harder. Victoria leaned toward Susan. Can we remove him now? My husband will hear about this. I am handling it, Susan said. Then she faced Adrian. You will move to economy, or I will report you as non-compliant. Adrian studied her for a long moment. What rule have I violated? Susan hesitated. You are refusing crew direction. A direction based on what? Operational necessity. Created after boarding, using your authorization code. The silence that followed was immediate. Susan's eyes flicked toward Hannah's tablet, confirming more than any answer could. Victoria suddenly reached for the handbag and pulled it closer. The movement caused the object inside to shift again, heavier this time, followed by a faint electronic chirp. Hannah's head snapped toward the sound. Adrian recognized it at once. A thermal monitoring alert. Quiet. Brief. Impossible to mistake if someone knew aviation batteries. Susan moved quickly. That bag needs to be placed in the crew storage compartment. Adrian stepped into the aisle, not blocking her, but making sure every word could be heard. No, that bag needs to be identified. Victoria's composure cracked. You have no authority here. Adrian met her eyes. Then why are all three of you so afraid of what is inside it? For one suspended second, nobody answered Adrian. The electronic chirp had stopped, but the silence it left behind felt louder than any alarm. Victoria's fingers tightened around the handbag handles. Susan's practiced calm had thinned into something sharper, something defensive. Hannah looked from the bag to her tablet, then back to Adrian, as if the pieces were finally arranging themselves into a picture she did not want to see. I asked a simple question, Adrian said. What is inside the bag? Victoria gave a brittle smile. Personal property. That is all you need to know. Not on an aircraft, Adrian replied. Not when it carries a restricted transfer tag. Luis leaned forward from across the aisle. Restricted? Susan turned toward him. Please remain seated. I am seated, Luis said. I am also listening. A ripple of quiet agreement moved through the cabin. Passengers who had tried to ignore the confrontation were no longer pretending. The issue had shifted. It was not only about a seat now. It was about a crew that seemed determined to hide something in plain sight. Hannah stepped closer, her voice low but clear. That tag is not for regular carry-on luggage. Susan's head snapped toward her. Hannah. It is not, Hannah continued. Crew transfer items are supposed to be documented before they enter the cabin. Victoria looked at her with open contempt. You are new. Do not pretend you understand the arrangement. The word arrangement landed heavily. Adrian caught it. So did Luis. Hannah's face changed. Fear remained, but beneath it something steadier took shape. What arrangement? She asked. Susan moved beside her and spoke through a fixed smile. Go to the rear galley now. Hannah did not move. She lowered her eyes to the tablet and tapped through the manifest. There is no declaration attached to Mrs. Langford's boarding record. Victoria stood halfway from her seat. That is enough. The handbag shifted again, and the device inside gave another faint chirp, followed by a soft vibration. Hannah stared at it. That sounds like a thermal monitor. Adrian nodded once. It does. Susan reached for the bag. I will secure it. Adrian's voice stopped her before her hand reached the handle. Securing an undeclared item after boarding does not erase the violation. Susan turned on him. You are interfering with crew operations. No, Adrian said. I am asking why crew operations were bypassed. Victoria's composure cracked further. My husband approved this. He sits on the board. Captain Blake knows exactly what this is. Hannah looked toward the cockpit. The captain approved it? Susan said nothing, and that silence answered for her. Luis slowly set his magazine aside. So the bag skipped inspection because of who she knows. Victoria glared at him. You have no idea how aviation business works. Adrian looked at the hidden red tag, then at Susan. Actually, some of us do. Hannah's tablet chimed. A system notice had appeared beneath the seat change log. Manual cabin exemption. Authorized by Captain Thomas Blake. Her eyes widened. There is an exemption code, she said. But no cargo description. No battery classification. No safety certificate. Susan stepped closer, her voice dropping. Delete that screen and return to duty. Hannah looked at her, stunned. You want me to delete it? The cabin went completely still. Susan realized too late that too many people had heard. Adrian studied Hannah's face and saw the exact moment hesitation became decision. She raised the tablet where Luis and the nearest passengers could see the record. No, she said. I am not deleting anything. Victoria's voice sharpened. You will lose your job. Hannah turned toward her. Maybe. but I will not help you hide this. Adrian held Susan's gaze. Now we are past a seating dispute. From behind the cockpit door came the sound of footsteps. Captain Thomas Blake emerged into the cabin, his expression controlled until he saw Adrian standing beside 2A. Then, for the first time, someone with authority looked afraid. Captain Thomas Blake stopped 3 feet from Adrian, and the confidence he carried from the cockpit faded the moment their eyes met. It lasted less than a second, but Adrian saw it. So did Hannah. What is happening here? Thomas asked, though his attention remained fixed on the man beside seat 2A. Susan answered quickly. A passenger is refusing instructions and interfering with cabin procedure. That is not what happened, Hannah said. Her voice trembled, but it did not break. She held up the tablet. His ticket was valid. Susan changed the seat status after he boarded, and Mrs. Langford's bag has a manual cabin exemption with no description, no battery classification, and no safety certificate. Thomas looked at the screen, then at Victoria. Put the tablet away. Hannah stared at him. Captain, the exemption carries your authorization code. The cabin tightened around those words. Victoria rose fully from her seat and pulled the handbag close to her side. Thomas, handle this. My husband said there would be no problem. Adrian watched the captain's jaw tense. There was familiarity in the way she used his first name, the easy expectation that rules would bend around her. Thomas lowered his voice. Mrs. Langford, please sit down. Do not speak to me like I caused this, she snapped. He did. She pointed at Adrian as if calm questions were more dangerous than an undeclared device. Thomas turned toward him. Sir, you need to step off the aircraft while we resolve the matter. Adrian remained still. On what basis? You are disrupting departure. The bag is disrupting departure. Thomas took one measured step closer. This is your final instruction. A uniformed gate supervisor appeared near the boarding door, drawn by the delay. Susan motioned toward Adrian. We need him removed from the cabin. The supervisor approached and reached toward Adrian's arm, stopping just short of contact. Sir, please come with me. For an instant, the polished cabin disappeared. Adrian was 19 again, standing in the aisle of a commuter flight from Atlanta to Baltimore, holding a paid ticket while a gate agent told him the seat must belong to someone else. He remembered the eyes around him, some curious, some impatient, most relieved that the humiliation was not happening to them. He remembered stepping off that plane because he had no title, no lawyer, no one willing to say the obvious truth out loud. He had spent the night in the terminal beneath fluorescent lights, listening to boarding announcements and promising himself that one day he would build systems that did not require dignity to prove itself twice. The memory passed in a breath. The cabin returned. The supervisor's hand hovered inches from his sleeve. Adrian looked at it, then at Thomas. Do not turn a safety violation into an accusation against the person who noticed it. Thomas's face hardened. You do not understand the situation. Then explain why an unclassified device was allowed into the cabin under your personal exemption. Victoria's handbag gave another soft vibration. This time, a small amber indicator glowed beneath the partly open zipper. Hannah saw it first. The monitor is active, she said. The internal temperature is rising. Susan reached for the bag again. Victoria pulled it away. Nobody touches this. Then it should never have been on board, Adrian replied. Thomas glanced toward the cockpit, calculating. We can move it to the rear storage compartment. Not without identifying the contents, Hannah said, and not without notifying ground safety. Thomas turned on her. You are no longer part of this discussion. Hannah lowered the tablet, but stayed where she was. Louise spoke from across the aisle. She became part of it when she told the truth. Several passengers murmured agreement. Susan looked around as control slipped from her hands. This is becoming a security issue. Adrian met her gaze. It became a security issue when you chose privilege over procedure. Thomas stepped closer, his voice low and urgent. Leave the aircraft now, or I will have the gate team document you as a threat to operations. Adrian reached calmly into his jacket and removed his phone. Then make sure the document includes every word you just said. He selected a contact and waited. The call connected almost immediately. Maya, he said, still watching Thomas. Activate ground hold 7. On the other end of the call, Maya Ellis did not ask for an explanation. Adrian's voice was enough. Ground hold 7 confirmed, she said. I am locking the aircraft release and opening the safety audit channel now. Thomas's face changed. The name of the protocol meant something to him. Susan looked from the captain to Adrian, suddenly less certain that he was merely an inconvenient passenger. "You cannot place a hold on this flight," Thomas said. Adrian kept the phone at his ear. "It is already placed." A muted tone sounded from the cockpit, followed by an automated notice through the internal system. "Departure clearance suspended. Crew authorization required." The words appeared on Hannah's tablet at the same moment. She stared at the screen. "The aircraft is locked from release," she said. Victoria let out a breath of disbelief. "This is ridiculous. My husband will have all of you fired." Adrian looked at her. "Your husband may be the reason we are here." Maya's voice returned, calm and precise. "I have the boarding record." Seat 2A was confirmed under Adrian Cole at 5:42 p.m. Susan Miller changed it to manual review at 6:07 p.m., 20 seconds after he requested verification. Hannah raised her eyes toward Susan. Susan said nothing. Maya continued. "The bag entered through a crew transfer exemption authorized by Captain Thomas Blake. There is no cargo description, no hazardous material declaration, and no inspection record." Thomas stepped toward Adrian, then stopped himself. "That information is confidential." "Safety records are not a hiding place," Adrian replied. Maya typed rapidly in the background. "I am tracing the item tag now. The serial number belongs to Langford Energy Systems. Prototype lithium aviation battery, model LE9. Weight, 38 pounds. A low murmur spread through the cabin. Victoria's expression tightened. "It is a demonstration unit. It is perfectly safe." "Then why was it not declared?" Hannah asked. Victoria ignored her. Maya's voice sharpened. "There is more. A test unit with the same model number exceeded its approved thermal limit during a laboratory evaluation 12 days ago. The incident was marked internal review pending. It has not received passenger aircraft clearance." The amber light beneath the handbag zipper blinked again. Hannah stepped back half a pace. "The monitor is still rising." Adrian's voice remained steady. "Maya, notify ground safety and airport fire prevention. No emergency announcement. Keep the cabin calm." "Already initiated," Maya replied. "A certified containment team is approaching the gate." Susan looked toward the boarding door. "We can remove the bag ourselves." "No," Adrian said. "You have already demonstrated that you cannot be trusted to handle it by procedure." Thomas lowered his voice. "Who gave you access to these systems?" Adrian met his gaze. "The same person who gave you permission to operate this aircraft." Thomas went still. Susan's eyes narrowed as she searched Adrian's face, trying to place him. Louise leaned into the aisle. "You knew this was dangerous, did you not?" Thomas answered too quickly. "There was no confirmed danger. There was enough uncertainty to require inspection," Adrian said. "You skipped it because Mrs. Langford's name opened doors." Victoria stood beside her seat, gripping the bag as if possession could become proof. "You are turning a misunderstanding into a spectacle." Adrian looked at the bag, then at the passengers whose lives had been placed beneath someone else's convenience. "No, I am stopping a private favor from becoming a public risk." Through the open boarding door came the sound of measured footsteps. 2 airport safety officers appeared with a containment case, followed by a ground operations manager whose face went pale when he saw Adrian. "Mr. Cole," the manager said. The cabin fell silent. Thomas closed his eyes for one brief second. Susan stared at Adrian as recognition finally arrived. Maya spoke through the phone one last time. "The board has joined the audit call. They are waiting for your instruction." Adrian lowered the phone and looked directly at the captain. "Good. Now everyone will hear exactly how this happened." The ground operations manager stood frozen at the entrance until Adrian gave a small nod. Only then did he step inside. "Mr. Cole, I was not informed you were traveling today." Susan's lips parted, but no words came. Victoria looked from the manager to Adrian, searching for some explanation that would preserve the world she thought she controlled. "Cole," she said. Adrian lowered his phone. "Adrian Cole." The name moved through the cabin in whispers. Hannah recognized it first. Her eyes widened as she looked toward the aircraft information plate near the front galley. Cole Aviation Holdings. The company name was printed in small letters beneath the leasing certification. Thomas stared at Adrian with the expression of a man watching a locked door close. "You are the Adrian Cole?" Louise asked from across the aisle. Adrian did not look away from the captain. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Cole Aviation Holdings. This aircraft is registered to my company and leased under a safety agreement that Captain Blake signed personally. The cabin became completely silent. Even Victoria loosened her grip on the handbag. Susan's voice came out thin. Why did you not identify yourself? Adrian turned toward her. Because a valid ticket should have been enough. The sentence landed harder than anger. Susan looked down. Adrian continued, his tone measured. You saw a black man in simple clothes and decided his boarding pass mattered less than a white woman's preference. You changed his seat record after he arrived. You labeled his questions aggressive. Then you tried to remove him while protecting an undeclared device. Victoria recovered enough to raise her chin. This is being exaggerated. My husband is a board member. He approved the transfer. Adrian faced her. Your husband has no authority to waive federal safety requirements or the terms of my aircraft lease. He will challenge that, she replied. He already has, Maya said through Adrian's phone. The board is listening now. Victoria's face lost color. Adrian raised the phone slightly so the cabin could hear. Maya continued. Mr. Langford has confirmed that he requested special handling, but he denies authorizing the captain to bypass inspection. Legal has preserved the messages. Thomas took a slow breath. This was a judgment call. No, Adrian said. A judgment call requires judgment. You traded procedure for influence. The airport safety officers moved carefully toward Victoria. One of them spoke in a calm voice. Ma'am, please set the bag on the seat and step into the aisle. Victoria looked toward Susan for help, but Susan remained still. The authority she had borrowed from privilege was gone. This is my property, Victoria said. And it requires inspection, the officer replied. She finally released the handles. The officers placed the bag inside the containment case and secured it without urgency or alarm. Hannah watched every step, her tablet still holding the record Susan had ordered her to delete. Adrian turned to her. Keep that file exactly as it is. Hannah nodded. Yes, Mr. Cole. And send a copy to the independent safety review team. Not company management. Independent review. Thomas's shoulders dropped. Adrian, we can resolve this privately. Adrian looked at him. You tried to classify me as a threat in front of an entire cabin. Now you want privacy because the truth has your name on it. Louise quietly said. That is exactly what happened. Several passengers nodded. Susan gathered enough courage to speak. I did not know who you were. Adrian faced her, his expression calm but unyielding. That is not your defense. That is the problem. Maya's voice returned. The containment team has confirmed the device is above its approved cabin temperature. Ground safety recommends immediate removal of all passengers and suspension of the aircraft pending inspection. Adrian looked toward the cockpit, then at the people seated beneath a risk they had never agreed to take. Issue the cancellation, he said. Thomas stared at him. You are canceling the flight? Adrian's answer was quiet. I am protecting the passengers you forgot were your responsibility. The cancellation notice moved through the aircraft in a calm, automated voice, but the reaction was immediate. Passengers looked up from their seats, confused at first, then frustrated as the words settled over the cabin. Flight canceled. Deplane in an orderly manner. Await rebooking instructions at the gate. A man near the rear muttered about a missed connection. Someone else sighed and reached for an overhead bag. Victoria stood in the aisle with disbelief written across her face. You cannot do this, she said. Adrian looked toward the containment case as the safety officers carried it through the boarding door. It is already done. Thomas stepped forward, his authority reduced to a uniform and a title no one trusted anymore. The aircraft can be inspected quickly. We may still be able to depart. The ground operations manager shook his head. Not under the current crew. The release has been suspended. Susan looked toward the passengers as if searching for sympathy. None came. Hannah remained beside the galley, holding the tablet that contained the record Susan had tried to erase. Maya's voice came through Adrian's phone again. The board has approved immediate administrative suspension for Captain Blake and Susan Miller pending independent review. All access credentials are being disabled now. Susan reached for her tablet. The screen had already gone dark. Thomas checked his cockpit badge against the panel. A red light appeared. He stared at it for a long moment. The system had answered before he could. Victoria's voice rose. My husband will reverse this. Maya replied without hesitation. Mr. Langford has been removed from the safety committee while legal reviews his involvement. Victoria went silent. The shield she had carried into the cabin had cracked, and there was nothing behind it but the consequences of her own choices. Louise stood and stepped into the aisle. People were angry when they heard the flight was canceled, he said, looking around the cabin. They should know why. Hannah lifted the tablet slightly. I have the records. Adrian looked at her. Tell them only what is confirmed. Hannah nodded and faced the passengers. Her voice was nervous, but every word was clear. An undeclared prototype battery was brought on board without the required inspection. The seat record for Mr. Cole was changed after boarding to protect the bag's placement. The captain approved the exemption, and I was told to delete the evidence. The irritation in the cabin changed shape. It became silence, then shock. A woman near the window slowly lowered her carry-on. So the cancellation may have protected us, she said. Hannah answered, Yes, ma'am. Susan closed her eyes. Thomas looked toward the floor. Adrian watched the passengers process how close convenience had come to outranking safety. The ground operations manager stepped forward. Everyone will be rebooked at no cost. Hotel accommodations will be provided where necessary. Cole Aviation Holdings will cover the disruption. Adrian added, No passenger will carry the financial burden for a failure they did not cause. That was when the first person thanked him. Then another. Not with applause. Not with celebration. The mood was too serious for that. People simply nodded as they filed toward the exit, understanding now that the delay was not punishment. It was protection. Victoria remained beside seat 2B, smaller somehow without the handbag that had announced her privilege. An airport representative approached her. Ma'am, you will need to accompany us for a formal statement. She looked at Adrian. You ruined everything over a seat. Adrian held her gaze. No, you used a seat to reveal everything. Susan turned to Hannah. You could have handled this privately. Hannah looked at the dark tablet in Susan's hand, then at the active evidence file in her own. Private is where this kept happening. Adrian heard the strength in her voice and nodded once. Outside the windows, ground crews surrounded the aircraft, placing inspection markers beneath the wing. Inside, the cabin that had begun with one woman refusing to move her bag now stood emptying under the weight of a truth none of them could hide. The last passengers stepped onto the jet bridge carrying the quiet realization that inconvenience had spared them from something far worse. Adrian remained near the front of the cabin as airport safety officers completed their initial inspection. Beyond the windows, evening lights stretched across the runway, turning the grounded aircraft silver and gold. It looked peaceful from the outside. Inside, every assumption that had filled the cabin was being dismantled. Thomas stood beside the cockpit door without his access badge. Susan waited near the galley, her hands folded tightly as an airport representative recorded her statement. Victoria sat alone in seat 2B, the space beside her finally empty. The bag that had occupied 2A was gone, sealed inside a containment case and transferred to a secure inspection area. Without it, the seat looked ordinary. Adrian knew it had never been ordinary. It had become a line drawn between entitlement and dignity, between influence and truth. Hannah approached him slowly. The independent review team received the files, she said. I sent the original timestamps, the exemption record, and the seat change history. Adrian nodded. You did the right thing. She looked towards Susan. I almost stayed quiet. Courage does not mean you never hesitate, Adrian said. It means the truth matters more than what hesitation costs you. Hannah absorbed the words, then gave a small nod. Louise stood near the boarding door, waiting for the next group to be escorted toward rebooking. Mr. Cole, he said, most people would have revealed who they were the moment they were challenged. Adrian looked at seat 2A. Then they would have treated my title correctly and learned nothing about how they treat everyone else. Victoria heard him. She rose and faced him with what remained of her composure. You wanted this to happen, she said. You wanted to embarrass us. Adrian turned toward her. I wanted the system to tell the truth. You could have stopped it earlier. So could you. You could have moved your bag. Susan could have verified my ticket. Captain Blake could have followed inspection rules. At every step, someone had a chance to choose differently. Victoria had no answer. An airport representative asked her to continue toward the jet bridge. Before leaving, she looked back at the empty seat, as though only now understanding how much damage had grown from her refusal to give up a space that was never hers. Thomas approached Adrian after she was gone. I spent 30 years building my career, he said quietly. One decision should not erase all of it. Adrian held his gaze. It was not one decision. It was a chain of decisions, and every link protected privilege over passengers. Thomas lowered his eyes. Susan remained silent. Adrian stepped toward the boarding door, then paused and looked back at the cabin. This flight was not canceled because I was disrespected, he said. It was canceled because the people responsible for safety proved they could not be trusted with it. Hannah stood straighter. Louise listened from the doorway. Adrian continued, his voice calm and clear. Her bag blocked my seat. Their prejudice blocked their judgment. The first was insulting. The second put everyone at risk. Outside, passengers were being handed new boarding passes, hotel vouchers, and meal credits. No applause followed Adrian. None was needed. The consequences were already speaking. He walked onto the jet bridge without raising his voice, without demanding recognition, and without taking the seat he had paid for. That night, 2A remained empty, but the standard Adrian defended traveled much farther than the aircraft ever would.